The corrupted scholar, Saruman's descent into darkness through ring lore and the birth of the Uruk-hai, in the heart of Nan Corunia, where the misty mountains cast long shadows across the verdant vale, the Tower of Orthanc stood as a sentinel of stone. Its obsidian walls, smooth as glass and hard as diamond, pierced the sky like a spear of darkness. Within this impenetrable fortress dwelt Saruman the White, chief of the Astari and wisest of the Maya.
Knowledge is power, and power is the key to safeguarding Middle-earth.
The wizard's resonant voice echoed through the cavernous halls of Orthanc, his words a mantra that fueled his ceaseless pursuit of wisdom. As the Third Age waned, Saruman's thirst for knowledge grew ever more insatiable, driving him to plumb the depths of ancient lore and forgotten magics. In the vast libraries of the Númenórean fortress, shelves groaned under the weight of countless tomes and scrolls. Saruman moved among them with purpose, his white robes whispering against the stone floor. His long fingers, adorned with rings of silver and gold, traced the spines of leather-bound volumes, seeking out the most arcane and forbidden texts.
Ah, here it is. The forging of the Rings of Power by Celebrimbor himself. Such secrets lie within these pages.
The wizard's eyes gleamed with an unnatural light as he carefully opened the ancient book. Dust motes danced in the air, illuminated by the flickering candlelight. Saruman hunched over the text, his beard nearly brushing the yellowed pages as he devoured every word, every diagram, every scrap of knowledge that might unlock the mysteries of ring lore. Days turned to weeks, weeks to months, as Saruman delved ever deeper into his studies. The changing of seasons outside went unnoticed, for in the timeless halls of Orthanc, only the pursuit of power held any meaning. A knock at the door of his study broke Saruman's concentration. He looked up, irritation flashing across his noble features.
Enter.
A messenger, clad in the livery of Gondor, stepped into the room. He bowed low, intimidated by the wizard's piercing gaze.
My lord Saruman, I bring word from Minas Tirith. The White Council is to convene at Rivendell. Your presence is requested with all haste.
The White Council? Very well. You may go.
As the door closed behind the retreating messenger, Saruman's lips curled into a contemptuous smile. He rose from his desk, his tall frame unfolding like a predator awakening from slumber.
So, Elrond and Galadriel wish to discuss the growing shadow in the east. How predictable.
The journey to Rivendell was swift, for Saruman commanded powers beyond the ken of mortal men. As he strode into the council chamber, all eyes turned to him. Elrond, Lord of Imladris, nodded in greeting, while Galadriel, the Lady of Light, regarded him with eyes that seemed to pierce through flesh and bone.
Saruman, we are gladdened by your arrival. The shadow in Dol Guldur grows stronger. We must decide on a course of action.
Saruman listened as the council debated, his face an impassive mask. When at last he spoke, his voice was smooth as honey, yet laced with a subtle venom.
My friends, your concerns are valid, but perhaps premature. The enemy, if indeed it is him, is weak. To strike now would be folly. We must wait, gather our strength, and learn more of our foe before we act.
His words hung in the air, seductive in their logic. Many nodded in agreement, swayed by the wizard's charisma and reputation for wisdom. Yet Galadriel's eyes narrowed, sensing something amiss in Saruman's counsel.
And what of the ring, Saruman? If Sauron regains it, all our caution will be for naught.
The ring is lost, my lady. It has passed out of all knowledge. Let us not chase shadows when real threats loom on our borders.
The council concluded, accepting Saruman's advice to delay action against Dol Guldur. As the wizard prepared to return to Orthanc, Galadriel approached him, her ethereal beauty belying the steel in her gaze.
You walk a dangerous path, Coronir. Take care that, in seeking to understand the enemy, you do not become him.
Saruman met her gaze unflinchingly, a spark of defiance in his eyes.
I thank you for your concern, Lady of Lorien, but I assure you, my loyalty to our cause is unwavering.
Back in the solitude of Orthanc, Saruman's mask of benevolence fell away. He ascended the spiraling stair to the highest chamber of the tower, where a velvet-shrouded object awaited him. With reverent hands, he unveiled the Palantir, the seeing stone of Orthanc.
Show me the secrets of power.
As Saruman gazed into the inky depths of the Palantir, Shadows seemed to writhe within its crystalline surface. The wizard's eyes widened, reflecting horrors and wonders beyond imagining. Hours passed, yet Saruman remained transfixed, his mind reaching out across the vastness of Middle-earth, seeking knowledge, seeking power. When at last he tore his gaze from the stone, the first rays of dawn were creeping over the horizon. Saruman stumbled to the window, his normally composed features haggard and drawn. He looked to the east, where the shadow of Mordor lay like a stain upon the land.
To defeat the enemy, one must understand him, and to understand him.
The wizard's voice trailed off, his words lost in the wind that howled around the pinnacle of Orthanc. But in the silence that followed, a decision was made. Saruman the White, wisest of the Istari, took his first step down a path from which there would be no return. Parim aufrem pevi of. As the sun rose over Isengard, casting long shadows across the once verdant vale, Saruman descended into the depths of Orthanc. In secret chambers far from prying eyes, he began to study the arts of the enemy. Ancient tomes of dark magic, long thought lost, found their way into his hands. Forbidden rituals were performed in the dead of night, their unholy power seeping into the very stones of the fortress. Chapter 2. The Forging of Ambition. In the lofty chambers of Orthanc, where shadows danced upon ancient stone walls, Saruman stood before the unveiled Palantir. Its obsidian surface gleamed with an otherworldly light, reflecting the wizard's gaunt face and burning eyes.
At last, the hour has come.
His fingers, once steady and sure, now trembled with anticipation. As he reached out to touch the smooth stone, as his hands made contact, a great lidless eye wreathed in flame filled the Palantir's depths. A voice, both alluring and terrible, echoed in Saruman's mind.
The White Wizard seeks knowledge. Tell me, Corunir, what do you desire?
I seek only to understand, to gain wisdom that I might better serve Middle-earth.
Serve? You were meant to rule, Saruman. Your power far exceeds that of the pitiful races you protect. Why content yourself with serving when you could command?
Saruman's brow furrowed, a bead of sweat rolling down his temple as he wrestled with the Dark Lord's words.
The Valar sent me to guide, not to dominate.
And what have the Valar done for Middle-earth of late? They abandoned these shores long ago. It falls to those with the strength and wisdom to shape the world's fate. Are you not among the wisest, Saruman?
Days turned to weeks, weeks to months, and months to years. Each communion with the Palantir left Saruman more conflicted, his once pure white robes slowly taking on shimmering hues of many colors. In the depths of Orthanc, Saruman paced restlessly, his mind awhirl with visions of power and dominion. The stone walls seemed to close in around him, a prison of his own making.
No, not a prison, a fortress. My fortress, my fortress.
He strode to a great window, gazing out over the verdant circle of Isengard. The lush gardens and ancient trees that had stood for ages untold now seemed insignificant.
Wasted space, wasted potential.
With a wave of his staff, Saruman summoned his servants. Orcs, goblins, and men of dubious character scurried to answer his call.
Tear it down, all of it. The time for beauty is past. Now is the age of industry and power.
The servants hesitated, exchanging uneasy glances.
But, Master, the trees of Fangorn.
Saruman's eyes flashed dangerously, his voice taking on a hypnotic quality that brooked no argument.
Are you questioning my orders? The trees will fuel our forges. The gardens will house our workshops. Isengard shall become a testament to progress and might.
The orc captain bowed low, his resistance melting away under the wizard's compelling gaze.
As you command, Lord Saruman.
And so began the transformation of Isengard. The once peaceful vale echoed with the sound of axes and saws. Ancient trees, some as old as Middle-earth itself, crashed to the ground. The Ents of Fangorn stirred, their slow anger kindling as they watched their allies fall. Deep in the heart of Fangorn Forest, Treebeard, eldest of the Ents, gazed towards Isengard with eyes filled with sorrow and growing rage.
The wizard has forgotten his purpose. He has turned against the very land he was sent to protect.
But the Ents, slow to anger and slower still to act, watched and waited, their patience as enduring as the roots of the mountain. As the months wore on, Isengard's transformation accelerated. Where once stood gardens now rose great forges and workshops, belching smoke into the once clear sky. The ring of hammers on anvils echoed day and night, a ceaseless rhythm that spoke of Saruman's growing ambition. In the depths of Orthanc, Saruman labored tirelessly. His hands, once used for healing and creation, now tore and remade. In dark pits, he bred a new strain of orcs, larger and more fearsome than any seen before.
Weak, pitiful, unworthy of the task at hand.
His voice, once melodious and compelling, now dripped with contempt as he surveyed the misshapen creatures before him.
But you shall be the foundation upon which I build my greatness.
With arcane arts and forbidden knowledge, Saruman reshaped his creations. Flesh yielded to his will, bones cracked and reformed. From the pits of Isengard emerged a new breed of orc, the Uruk-hai. The first Uruk-hai stood before its master, a towering monstrosity of muscle and hate. Its yellow eyes gleamed with cruel intelligence as it awaited Saruman's command.
You are the first of many. Go forth and multiply. Soon, all of Middle-earth shall tremble at the mention of Isengard.
As his army grew, so too did Saruman's pride. He spent long hours before the Palantir, communing with the Dark Lord, and convinced of his own cunning.
The world of men weakens. Gondor falters. The line of kings is broken. Who but you has the power to stand against the coming darkness?
Perhaps you are right, but how? How can one wizard hope to stem the tide?
Not alone, Curanir, but with armies at your command, with strength of arms and the power of industry, you could forge a new order, one that would stand against any threat.
Saruman nodded, his resolve hardening. He turned from the Palantir and strode to a great mirror that dominated one wall of his chamber. His reflection stared back at him, resplendent in robes that shimmered with every color imaginable.
Saruman the White, a title for lesser beings, for those content to serve and never to rule.
His voice swelled with pride, filling the chamber with its resonance.
I am Saruman of many colors, for white light can be broken, and once broken, it can never be made whole again.
As he spoke these words, a chill wind seemed to sweep through the tower, as if the very stones of Orthanc shuddered at this proclamation. But Saruman paid it no heed, his mind filled with visions of power and dominion. In the highest chamber of Orthanc, where the Palantir lay uncovered upon its pedestal, a faint whisper could be heard, a sibilant voice promising knowledge, power, and mastery over all of Middle-earth. And Saruman, once the wisest of the Astari, listened with rapt attention, unaware that each word drew him further into the web of darkness that would ultimately be his undoing.
And so the world shall know your power, Saruman, of many colors. Together we shall reshape Middle-earth in our image.
As Saruman's laughter echoed through the halls of Orthanc, a chill wind swept through the tower. The wizard, once the wisest of the Astari, stood at the precipice of his fall, unaware that each step towards power drew him further into the web of darkness that would ultimately be his undoing. And so, as the Third Age of Middle-earth drew to a close, the stage was set for a conflict that would shake the foundations of the world. Saruman, corrupted by his lust for power and knowledge, had become a new threat in the growing darkness. The once verdant Isengard now stood as a testament to his fallow place of industry and malice, where Uruk-hai, trained for war and forges, burned day and night. In the shadows of Fangorn, the Ents continued their vigil, their anger growing with each passing day. And far to the east, in the land of Mordor, the Dark Lord Sauron watched and waited, pleased with the corruption of the once great wizard. Chapter 3. The Ringmaker's Folly. In the depths of Orthanc, where shadows danced upon ancient stone walls, Saruman hunched over his forge. His once pristine white robes now shimmered with an array of hues, a testament to his wavering allegiance. The wizard's brow furrowed in concentration as he manipulated molten metal with trembling hands.
At last, the moment of triumph approaches. I shall forge a ring to rival the one itself.
His voice echoed through the cavernous chamber, a mixture of anticipation and desperation. The air hung heavy with acrid smoke and the tang of molten metal. Saruman's eyes, once clear and wise, now gleamed with an unnatural light as he poured his will into the creation before him. Hours passed, perhaps days. Time held little meaning in the shadowed forge. At last, Saruman lifted a crude ring from the anvil, its surface marred and uneven.
What mockery is this? Where's the power I sought?
He hurled the ring across the room in a fit of rage, where it clattered uselessly against the stone floor. Saruman's shoulders slumped, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Above, in the Tower of Orthanc, a messenger from the White Council awaited an audience. The wizard ascended from his secret forge, composing himself with each step.
Lord Saruman, I bring urgent tidings from Mirkwood. The shadow grows ever darker, and there are whispers of the enemy's return.
Saruman's eyes narrowed, his mind still dwelling on his failed creation.
Whispers and shadows, nothing more. The White Council fusses over trifles while true power lies within our grasp.
But, my lord, surely we must act.
We shall act when I deem it necessary. For now we watch and wait. The enemy, if he truly stirs, will reveal himself in time.
The messenger bowed and retreated, confusion and concern etched upon his face. Saruman turned to gaze out the window, his eyes drawn to the pits of Isengard below. In those noisome depths, a new breed of warrior took shape. The Uruk-hai, born of dark arts and forbidden knowledge, trained ceaselessly. Their harsh cries echoed off the walls of the once verdant vale, a discordant symphony of violence.
My children, my army, with you I shall reshape Middle-earth in my image.
Pride swelled within Saruman's breast as he beheld his creations. Yet even as he reveled in his perceived triumph, a seed of doubt took root in the depths of his mind. In the highest chamber of Orthanc, shrouded in velvet, the Palantir beckoned. Saruman approached it with reverence and trepidation, his hands hovering over its smooth surface.
Show me the path to true power.
As his fingers made contact with the seeing stone, visions flashed before his eyes. Armies marching, cities burning, and at the heart of it all, a great lidless eye wreathed in flame.
Join me, and all you desire shall be yours.
The voice, silky and seductive, wormed its way into Saruman's thoughts. It whispered of glory, of dominion over all Middle-earth.
I shall consider your offer, Lord Sauron.
As Saruman withdrew his hands from the Palantir, he failed to notice how they trembled. The once great wizard stood at the precipice of his fall from grace, blind to the ruin that awaited him. Outside Orthanc, the forges of Isengard belched smoke into the sky, blotting out the stars. The Uruk-hai trained with savage intensity, their weapons clashing in the night. And in the heart of his tower, Saruman, the many-colored, plotted his next move, unaware that each step led him further from the light and deeper into shadow. Thus did Saruman, once the wisest of the Astari, set upon the path that would lead to his downfall. His quest for power and knowledge, born of pride and nurtured by Sauron's whispers, would ultimately betray all he once held dear. The stage was set for the final act of his tragic fall, a descent into darkness that would shake the very foundations of Middle-earth.